Tonight on the Salty Podcast, my guest is Kerry Gonzalez from AMG Insurance International. And we're tackling the realities of insuring an older boat. We'll break down how underwriters define older, what depreciation really means for your coverage, and the key paperwork you need, from maintenance records to surveys, to protect your claim. Plus, we'll cover hurricane zone restrictions, Bahamas time limits, and the market options you may not know exist. This is Yacht Insurance Explained. We'll be talking about other things too, but that's just kind of it in a nutshell. But before we get underway, if you like this sailing content, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps grow the channel. I'm your host, Captain Tinsley of Sailing Vessel Salty Abandon and Island Packet 320, and this is the Salty Podcast, episode 70. Please help me welcome Kerry. Hello,
hi, Tinsley.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Let me just take a drink real quick. We were just talking offline, and I was learning, this is the first time we've met. So let's just start with a few qualifying questions. How long have you been in the yacht insurance business and what drew you to it?
Oh, mercy. I grew up on the water in Canada on a small lake. They didn't allow jet skis, so it was a really quiet, serene place. And I'm at the point in my career where, I want to do something I love, and I love the water. So I've been an insurance broker for 36 years.
Wow.
And yeah, and what called me to this, that's a great question. I really just feel like it's very difficult for boat owners to get the truth unhindered from an insurance agent. They're expected to, a boat owner is expected to become an expert in insurance and to understand the fine print without having this kind of relationship. So often you find that, boat owners, especially when they have a claim, are given an 800 number, or they're expected to go back and read their policy and understand how the pieces all fit together with the promises that they've made as a boat owner.
That's for sure. Okay. What, from your perspective, what's the most common mistake you see boat owners make with insurance? And that kind of leads into what we were just talking about offline.
Focusing on the premium. I'm going to make a lot of enemies on this call when people say that, because we are all cost sensitive. We move to a boat, or we decide we're going to spend time on a boat with the expectation that we're going to save some money, right? And I know you and I were just talking about my common thread of our work, which is insurance is not your friend. We're not a good neighbor. You're not in good hands. It is very simply not a warm fuzzy. It is a two-sided contract whereby you agree to certain things, and the insurance company says that if you uphold your warranties and promises to me, we might pay coverage, and we might depreciate things, and we might attach certain conditions. We might want to investigate. And so it's really important to read the fine print.
Would this be a good place to talk about the whole Geico thing?
Yeah, Geico really wasn't in our plan at the beginning, but I think Geico is important because Geico used to work with independent agents. I had a few hundred boats with Geico at one point in time, and Geico made a decision to cut the independent agent out of the equation. And now if you have Geico, you have to go to a service center. So if you have Geico, you basically really need to become an insurance expert. When they renew your policy, they may self-depreciate from year to year. They might lower your value. So you really have to watch that.
They did in this case.
You have to watch that because they're going to lower it without your permission, and you do not have the option of appealing that whatsoever. They may also take your navigation box and narrow it. So you may have had Bahamas last year, and maybe this year they're going to take it away. Bahamas used to be something that they covered on an unlimited basis if you asked for it. Now they cover up to 90 days on the policy year, and you have to tell them where you're going and how long you're going to be in the Bahamas. So you have to give them the dates, and it has to be within that 90-day parameter. And there are other companies like that also. Now, the other important thing to note that we were talking about earlier with Geico is you have to be looking at the fine print on they send you a piece of paper on the top of your insurance policy, either electronically or through the mail, that basically says it's your responsibility to notify us of any material changes, including your location. So you have 14 days to update your location with Geico, or you have to go to the self-service website and update your storm plan with them. So if you're a cruiser who's constantly on the move, every 14 days, you're going on to the self-service website and you're updating your location and you're redoing your storm plan form. And I wasn't really prepared for this question in advance, but if anyone wants to reach out to me afterward for me to explain how that works, just know that I'm doing it as a consumer service. I do not represent Geico, but I can do their storm plan and the self-service website that you need to go to if you can't seem to find it in your paperwork.
Okay. And this also is on the audio podcast website. So for those that are listening, her email is Kerry at AMG Insurance International, INTL.com. That's Kerry Gonzalez. So there's the email right there. But that's very helpful. And I didn't know that. And so I was breaking the rules. So thank you. So I'm going to tighten up on that. So let's talk about the older boats, and then we can go wherever you want. But I've got some questions for you. How do underwriters define an older boat, and when does that start to affect coverage?
Yeah, so it's the proverbial it depends. So, Geico's rule is in the underwriting guidelines, the written rule is 30 years. So you're getting close if you're before
1998,
right. They may grandfather some boats in, but if you're a new boat going to them and you're 35 years old, they're going to reject you. So it really depends on the market and it depends on the value. So if you have a higher valued boat, or you've gone through a total refit and you've kept your receipts to justify that they're not just maintenance records, but they're actual capital improvements on the boat that improve the condition and value of the boat, and they're not just cosmetic and routine maintenance, then you might be in a different market. But let's go back to the underwriting definition of an older boat.
Okay.
For the most part, if your boat is over $150,000 in value and you're more than 26 years old, most markets in the United States will reject you. So it's important to know that there are options outside of the independent agent market. So if, for example, if you are in the United States and you still want to go to the Bahamas, but you're not going past the Bahamas, you might be able to go to a direct writer such as a State Farm. State Farm plays with larger values, older boats. They don't really like to write liveaboards or people who are never in a marina. So that's important to know.
Wow.
But if you have a home base and you're just cruising and going to the Bahamas, they would be a good option to check with.
Well, they allowed me to update my coverage from having addendums to my survey. Mm-hmm. And they even made exceptions, like it was more than a year, but they got it approved. And so that's one way of showing, because I had gotten a bunch of upgrades twice. So that is a way, right, to show proof that you have upgraded your boat, right?
Yes, but it's a fine line between an upgrade and a cosmetic or routine maintenance issue. Because sometimes if you're in real estate, that if you're making a cosmetic change and it improves your curb appeal, it doesn't necessarily improve your value. It just improves the way people view it, right? So it depends on the market, but whether you're looking at trying to place insurance for the first time or you have a claim, you should always keep your records and you should always keep an electronic copy of your maintenance records. I walked onto boats where someone has a binder with all their receipts and they're organized and beautiful. But let me tell you, we have responded to fires where everything has burned. Yeah. And all of a sudden, the claim becomes in question because they can't produce the maintenance records to justify the value, or to justify why the fire happened in the first place. Because if you can't produce the receipts, then you may not be able to prove that your fire extinguishing equipment was updated, that you had regular oil changes, that you had inspected a chain plate inspection. You need to keep the records in cloud form on the internet. Yeah.
I do both.
Good. That's really smart. I've seen a lot of people get burned during a claim because, no pun intended, because they can't produce records. It's so important. And then when you do go to shop your insurance, so say in 5 years, Geico drops you because they say, okay, we're not going to write a boat that old anymore. For a new market, you may have to produce all those receipts all over again, or at least a spreadsheet. And then they might come back and say, oh, can we see this receipt and this receipt to justify it? So it's both for applying for insurance, applying for new markets, as well as if you have a claim. And that's really the whole point of this conversation is we don't buy insurance just to have a piece of paper. We buy it so that if we have a claim that's unexpected and unintended, we can be made financially whole.
Right. Okay. So I do have a question for people watching either now or later in the replay, which is where most people watch. For those of you watching live, what's the age of your boat? Have you ever had an issue with getting coverage because of it? So I'd love to hear your comments in the comments. Okay, so what kinds of this is what we just covered. What kinds of maintenance documentation make the biggest impact with underwriters? What's the biggest thing that gives you value?
Yeah, so it's not so much the value that the underwriters are looking at. They want to know that your boat is a fair market value. So if the survey says it's average or below average value, underwriters don't like to see that. So they're going to look very specifically at the survey. They're not going to look at the number behind the value as much as they're going to look at, okay, this surveyor, he's like God, he's gospel. If he says your boat is worth $125,000, they're never going to question that. They're never going to question the comps. So it really goes back to the fair market value in your survey. Now,
mine got a Bristol. You got it, and I said, "What's that?" And she says, "It's the best you can get," or something like that. Good. So I didn't know they did that and the Geico accepted that,
Yeah.
As an
and if you're in the standard market, most markets really want to see that you have a NAMS or SAMS related surveyor. Those are the two survey associations. Otherwise, they're going to question the validity of the survey. And if you're with a London market, I just want to go back for a second so we don't miss this. If you're with a London market, the London markets may specifically ask you to resurvey your boat every 2 or 3 years.
That was my next question. Okay.
Yeah, if your boat's more than 26 years old, you need to be prepared for that. And if you go to the survey, it's really helpful to be at the survey and discuss with the surveyor, look, here are my records. Here's last time we did an oil sample. Here's my chain plate inspections, which are quite common because, that's not something that's covered by insurance. So you want to show the surveyor all your records so that they're incorporated into your survey.
Okay. Yeah, I'm due to get another survey. So Cecilia Potts, do you know that name?
No.
Okay, she's like the go-to for Island Package. She does other boats too, but Hayden turned me on to her, and she is wonderful.
Good.
Yeah. So, okay, so that was my next question. How often should a hold survey be done, and why should surveyor recommendations be in the?
That's a different question, Dinsley. How often should you do a survey? If you should do a survey as often as you need to change your insurance.
Okay, but you said every 2 years.
If you're with the same market, but if you're with a market that you're worried will drop you because you had a claim or some other reason, then you should have a survey that is within the last 2 years, because surveys are valid with every market for 2 years. And we're talking about out of water surveys. We're not talking about in water. In water surveys are no longer utilized for underwriting purposes.
Okay. How important are rigging inspection records and receipts when it comes to proving a boat's condition?
Yeah, so surveys have to be in your own name when you buy a boat because
Yeah,
they prove,
that was in
yeah,
there.
prove objectivity. But if you're buying a new island packet and you have rigging receipts from the former owner, they'll take the rigging receipts or a formal rigging inspection in anyone's name. It doesn't have to be objective. They want to see that the rigging has been cared for throughout the lifetime of the rigging. And the other thing is, if you get new rigging, like I know Colin, he'll give you a free formal, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I know he's given lots of people free formal rigging inspection reports when he's replaced the rigging. So most people don't ask for it because they don't know that underwriters want to see it. So if you're getting new rigging, make sure you ask for it because usually it's free.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to try to arrange in October, I'm going to go from Orange Beach to the Keys and then to the Bahamas.
Mhm.
And I'd like to stop in there and either, because it's a 1998 boat, and that is about the time they were changing that stainless steel. And I don't know, I've been told that yes or no, that it can be inspected. But, I don't know that that's true with the island packet inside. I'm talking about inside the boat.
Yeah.
But it's time for me to do something. So I might try to arrange something with him while I'm down there. What's the difference between agreed value and actual cash value policy, and which is better for older yachts? Is that a good question? You smile.
That's a great question.
Okay, good.
If you come to me and you say, I want to save money, I want to buy an actual cash value policy, I'm not going to sell you insurance because I feel like insurance, even without actual cash value, is based on trickery, deceit, and, just language that the common person doesn't understand. It's even hard for agents to understand it.
Yeah.
Why would anyone buy actual cash value that's going to look at the ambiguous opinion of the lifespan of an engine or a water maker, and they're going to form an opinion, okay, your water maker should have a lifespan of 5 years, so we're going to depreciate it. And a lot of times depreciation happens more with soft goods. But I've seen policies that depreciate everything on older boats. I would never buy an actual cash value policy because it's very deceptive and very misleading. Agreed value is the true concept of insurance. It's the concept of indemnification. Makes you financially whole. Whatever you put in it is what you get back out of it. Nothing more, nothing less. So if you bought it for $75,000, you get $75,000 back, right? If you have a total claim, total loss. Does that answer your question?
Well, what if you buy it for 85 or something and then put 30,000 in it, not including labor,
right?
And then I did the addendum. So is that what you're talking about?
So some insurance companies will allow you to update the value.
Right.
You can still do it on an agreed value basis. Some will say, okay, those things are general maintenance for an older boat. It really depends on the underwriter.
Okay. All right. Well, I added solar and lithium and all this good stuff, Did
you have lithium?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so there's another important thing. It's really important if you add lithium to disclose that to your agent or your underwriter in writing and get an acknowledgement back that they know there's lithium on your boat. Now, if you're with Geico, you're fine because the policy is silent. But if you're with a company like Markel or there's a list of others and you have lithium and you haven't disclosed it, you've voided your coverage because all lithium is excluded. Doesn't matter whether it's lithium ion or lithium iron phosphate. If you have lithium and you didn't disclose it to one of the markets that excludes it, you voided your coverage. So it's really important to have that, regular dialogue.
What if it's in the survey or the addendum to the survey?
That's disclosing it. Extra step of making sure you point it out to your agent or your representative in writing, and don't just point it out, but make sure you get an acknowledgement back that there's lithium and it's covered.
Okay. Wow. You're definitely right. They're not your friends.
You likely don't have coverage for lithium. It's not the intent of their policy to cover lithium.
Okay. All right. I know that the technology has gotten much safer. They don't view it that way.
We're not talking about my opinion or any particular underwriter's opinion. We're talking about a scenario where, the narrative has not been controlled. It does, it might have been a lithium bike or a lithium toy of some sort, or a lithium battery that was purchased off Amazon, or a used
Chinese battery.
aftermarket batteries. But that gives the whole lithium scenario a bad rap. And so there are certain markets who've just taken the posture that we're not going to assess whether it's good, bad, indifferent, whether it's OEM or aftermarket, and you're a do-it-yourself, or we're just going to say, look, all lithium's excluded. So if you have lithium, make sure you get confirmation back from your agent that it is covered on your policy.
I might hire you.
Well, I don't represent Geico because Geico doesn't.
No, I mean switch to you because it's. I would like to speak to a person like you. So
anyone can call us. We can answer questions, but I think you've understood from our initial dialogue that if we're an independent agent. If an independent agent market is not the best scenario for you, we're going to be the first ones to tell you, look, we'll do you a favor. We'll educate you on the markets that can do this.
Okay.
But it's not us. And there are some markets that, you might have leverage with if you have property, if you have an auto policy, if you have life insurance with them, that you might be able to get an exception on your boat insurance.
Okay.
Where they might not write your boat. They might not insure your boat on a standalone basis. Like, for example, let me give you a few examples.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of insurance with farmers.
So if you have any insurance with Hanover, they will likely accept your boat, but they do not want to see boats in Florida. If you have insurance with Chubb, they will likely accept your boat.
What about farmers?
And I'll come back to that one.
Okay.
So Chubb will do Florida if it's not a scenario with an absentee owner. Like, they don't like snowbirds, but they do select situations in Florida for boats.
Okay.
And you do have to have a survey in certain situations, but it really just depends. Now, farmers, the boat side of farmers is Foremost Insurance, and we do have Foremost, but you can't be a Liveaboard. So if you're, and they're the same as, it's the same way with Progressive.
You know what? That is the company that I had before.
Okay.
Through that brokerage.
Yeah. So we have Foremost. We represent Foremost and Progressive, but one of the common mistakes people make is going, like I said, with the cheapest, but in the fine print of Foremost and Progressive, it is not their intent to insure liveaboards. Okay. So that's really important to know. And they also have stopped writing really old boats. So it just depends on your scenario and where you are.
What did they stop writing? What was that?
Back to the homeowners and where you can.
What did you say? They stopped writing on what boats?
Really old boats. So it depends on where your boat is. If your boat's in Florida, they don't want to necessarily write boats in Florida that are, over 10 years old. In some scenarios, it depends on the value.
What about next to Florida in Alabama?
It's a very clean line where, it depends on their market,
Okay. Here, Hayden's asking a question here. SB Island Spirit, what's great insurance for Caribbean cruisers 6 months per year? That's them,
Okay, let me finish this one answer though, because the tricks too, if you have homeowners and auto, you can also go to Pure Insurance. They make exceptions. Mount Holly will make exceptions. If you have a higher valued boat and you have property with AIG, they may make an exception.
Okay.
Caribbean. So we have a partner in the Caribbean that is not a true partner. It's just someone that, look, if I owned an island packet and I was headed to the Caribbean, I would insure with this group. And I send a lot of my customers there
Okay.
So they're not on this call because their team leads are on vacation this week, but I'm happy to direct anyone to them. I don't get paid for it. So this is extremely objective advice. But there is a broker out of Barbados called Arthur Gallagher. And I can give you the contacts for their entire team. They have about 8 markets that will write Caribbean coverage on sailboats in particular. One thing to know in particular is they do not like the litigious nature of the United States of America. So they don't like that we all sue each other.
Yeah.
So if you're going to the Caribbean and you're bringing your boat back to the U.S. this year or within the policy year, their markets do not want to insure you.
Well, what about in the case of Hayden where he leaves it there?
If he leaves it there, then Hayden should reach out to me again and I'll hook him with this team. And the one thing to know is that they do not like to write uninsured boaters because they attach it to that whole stigma of, lawsuits against each other. But it's important to know that if you're going to the Caribbean, a lot of people don't insure in the Caribbean. You better ask for it and you better push for uninsured boaters to be included in your insurance. It doesn't really affect the policy much, but if you just take whatever they give you, you're not going to get uninsured.
So when you say uninsured boaters, you're talking about the people around you on other boats. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They don't cover if somebody hits your boat or something.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Man.
Or if you leave your boat there, your boat breaks loose and they can't determine, if there's 4 uninsured boats and there's your boat and yours is the only one with insurance, guess who's paying?
Yeah. So
it's really important to have uninsured boaters. And if you know that going into it and you ask for it, it really doesn't affect your premium. And this particular broker was named one of the most ethical brokers in the world many years in a row, which is not something you often see attached to an insurance agent name. I'm not kidding you.
I know. I believe you. I just think it's funny.
I've referred hundreds of boaters to them. And like I said, I've never taken a penny from them, even for a referral. But then, it comes around because when they have boats that are coming back to the U.S., they send them back to me.
Nice.
And then we have to know that, look, if you're coming back from the Caribbean, you might need a new survey. You might need to have your fire extinguishing equipment inspected and certified.
Okay, here's a question for you. How do coverage options differ between non-hurricane prone and hurricane prone waters? I like it when you smile when I ask a question. I think I've hit a good question when you do that.
Let me start with the worst part of the answer. So you and I were talking earlier about the worst case scenario, which is a specific market called GIA, Global Insurance Agency. It's actually an insurance company that uses the Beaufort scale as the deductible determination. So as the wind speed increases, your deductible increases until, when you're at a category 4 or 5, you're basically paying 100% deductible.
I've never heard of that. But that is crazy.
Yeah. Well, people are pretty desperate for insurance right now. So they're buying a lot of crazy things, but that's still not the worst option because you can buy Chinese or Russian-based, Russian-backed insurance. And it's important to really know, is AMG paying my claim? No, the agent is never paying the claim. You better know what name is going to be on the check that's paying your claim.
You don't talk to them again.
Right. But back to the question about hurricane coverage. The hurricane coverage, and I could spend hours on this. The hurricane coverage always relates back to your storm plan. So let's talk about you. So you're with Geico. So read the fine print. So Geico says that your storm coverage only applies if you update your storm plan for every named storm or within 14 days of changing location.
I've never done that. I didn't even know.
You can read the fine print.
Yes.
But even if that's not in the fine print, so Geico requires you update your location regardless of whether it's a storm or not. Other companies just say, look, you have to update your location for a named storm. 72 hours before a named storm comes in and you're in the cone of uncertainty, the entire market in insurance shuts down and they say,
closings, real estate closings stop.
No more changes, no new business. If you hauled your boat out and put it on the hard because it was truly a better scenario, you just voided your coverage because your actual formal storm plan with the insurance company said you were going to be at XYZ Marina. And you're not where you said you were going to be.
Okay. Well, I do remember doing a storm plan, and I said I was going to try to haul out.
So someone is asking a question about Markel.
This is Hayden.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, so Markel is famous for requiring a haul out for every named storm. The reason I'm saying it and enunciating every word is because that means every. That means Tropical Storm Bertha. That means
it's impossible.
That means a category 1. That means every named storm.
You just have to plan on losing your boat.
Well,
I'm shocked I got paid last time.
I do sell Markel policies that have that, but normally they're for scenarios where someone is actually hauling out for the entire season. So, for Hayden,
that's what he does.
In particular, Hayden, one of your best options, depending on where you're at, will likely be a direct to market. It won't be through me, but we should have a separate offline conversation about where you should be going and how you should answer the questions. Answering insurance questions is like going before a judge and the judge says, okay, Tinsley, were you speeding? And you say, well, it's not really yes, it's not really no. Here's why I was driving really fast.
It's so situational. It's very situational. Well, in his case, he does haul out when he leaves the boat. He hauls it out and prepares it and chains it down, does all kinds of stuff. And is that the best scenario?
The best scenario is to treat your contract as if it is like black and white requirement. Okay. All right. So if you're not putting 9 fenders out, don't put on your storm plan that you're putting 9 fenders out. Okay. Right. I had an Island Packet owner on the phone today. I don't know if they're on this or not, so I'm not going to name them.
They might see it eventually.
Yeah, if they are, I'll apologize in advance. But we had to change their storm plan. Their storm plan had them in a different location. They know the drill. They've been with me a really long time, and they're actually in a better scenario. They went north instead of south, which they don't normally do. So what we did was we pulled up the map, and they truly do not want to be in a marina. And I get that. I rarely have claims where someone is, anchored out or in the mangroves tied out, and they really are good risk managers of their own, destiny. But I do have claims in marinas, and a lot of times it's things you can't control. The cleat breaks loose, someone else's boat breaks loose. You can't control the projectiles, all kinds of things happen in marinas. And I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong. What I am saying is that what's right and wrong is whatever's in your insurance contract. So what we did was we pulled up the map, and, their plan was to be upriver a certain number of miles. And I warned them, if you say you're 30 miles up north, I have to give a radius with a longitude and latitude. And so what I do is I do it a little bit more creatively for someone who's more of a full-time cruiser, and we give a range or a plan A, B, and C. We build in caveat wording that still allows you to make a judgment call, because I don't know if you're watching the weather for next week, but if you have an insurance company that says you must be outside the cone of uncertainty, you're really going to struggle to get outside that cone in a sailboat. You cannot run in a sailboat. Right. So it's better just to tell the truth and say, look, I'm not running. Here's my plan A, B, and C. But then again, if you're with a State Farm, they're not going to scrutinize your storm plan the same way as other markets, just as an example. So maybe we need to talk about other markets. But if you're making any changes, you have to make the changes more than 72 hours in advance of your storm, in advance of the storm or the cone of uncertainty. So we pulled up the map.
But it changes.
It does change.
Cone of uncertainty changes.
And I get this often. It does change. So that's why we pull up the map. We do our plan A, B, and C. We build in caveat wording. We give the underwriters an actual snapshot of the map that says we're going to be in this box. And we will either be in this marina or anchored upriver in this box.
Okay, so his name is Goose. His nickname is Goose. Holy guacamole! These policies have more holes in them than Swiss cheese.
Right.
Yeah.
I told you, like, boat insurance, we're not your friend. You're not a good neighbor, not in good hands. It's a contract that allows you to get into marinas. And if you are buying insurance for the true purpose of being financially whole, you better read every word in your policy or have an agent that's going to explain it to you. Transatlantic policy. So we wrote one this morning. It was a sailboat that was crossing the ocean. Yeah. We had 3 operators that were going to do the crossing. The wife did not want to go with these 3 guys. They're all engineers. They're probably going to rebuild the boat on the way across the ocean. So one of the 3 had a prior transatlantic crossing in his experience resume. The other 2 did not. So we went back and forth for 3 weeks, articulating their resume in different ways and slicing and dicing it. How many miles offshore had they been? How many days had they been offshore? What's the furthest nautical mile point that each one of them had been? And how many times had they been there? Because if you're doing a transatlantic crossing, underwriters want to see that you have blue water experience. And blue water, from an underwriting perspective, is not defined as going down the ICW, jumping to the Bahamas, and then jumping to the Caribbean. That is not blue water. But if you're doing the salty dog and you're jumping from somewhere in the Chesapeake over to Bermuda, going down to Antigua, that trek to Bermuda and down to the Caribbean is blue water.
Yeah. What about going across the Gulf?
Not blue water.
Really?
No. No,
Okay.
and Geico and most of the U.S. markets are not filed for Caribbean coverage. So you're looking at, a foreign market like a Lloyd's of London syndicate, a European market, a Bermuda market, or a Caribbean market. You're not looking at a U.S. market anymore.
And that's if you're going across the Atlantic.
Yeah, and if you're going across the Atlantic, each operator must be approved on their own merit, and you have to have a minimum of 2 to 3 operators because they want to say, okay,
right.
Look, if Tinsley and Hayden and I are all going to cross the ocean, sorry to pick on you, but if we're crossing the ocean together and you start coughing and I have a heart attack and then Hayden's the only one left, there's no one to take the second watch.
Are they going to do a physical of us?
No, but they do want to see that so if you're doing a crossing, it's based on a named operator policy, and you have to have 2 to 3 named operators at a minimum. They want to see 3 who are approved as named operators.
What about there's a sailor who just, with no experience, just went from Oregon to Hawaii, and he became really famous, is sailing with Phoenix. I didn't even think to ask him about his insurance.
Yeah, so that's a little different because there are markets that will do those waters. So it depends on the water. So the map of the world, I mean, if we took the map of the world, each insurance market would take the world map. I used to have one on my wall, it's gone, but they would draw a box and draw like 12 boxes around the world of where each navigation box could go.
Okay.
Travelers will draw boxes that don't match with Hanover. Hanover will have boxes that don't match with Chubb. Chubb will have boxes that don't match with, Guardian, one of the Caribbean markets. So it's really best to have a conversation with your agent about your monthly itinerary for the next 12 months. There is no such thing as trip coverage. So you want to I have an itinerary form you can use as kind of to develop your plan, and you're going to have a conversation about, where are we going for 12 months? And if that's going to change over time, you might change markets. Okay.
So the next 2 questions on my list are, what are the pros and cons of bundling yacht insurance and other policies through companies like AIG, Hanover, or Chubb? And what unique opportunities do London markets offer yacht owners compared to U.S. markets?
Okay, so London is surplus lines, non-admitted, non-standard insurance.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's a skeleton policy. You're getting less coverage for more money and higher deductibles, more conditions, more warranties, more limitations.
London bad.
No, London is not always bad. If you have an older boat, London might be necessary. But London is especially something that you really need to read your policy on. So if I'm going to write insurance with Lloyd's of London, it's like the US market, but it's syndicates. And if I write insurance there, I have to prove that I went to markets in the United States and got rejections for your insurance just to be allowed as an agent to go to London.
Okay. All right.
So,
here's Hayden. A local Caribbean policy won't let you sail to US.
No.
How do you cover that when you sail for USA?
No, you have to switch back and forth. So a Caribbean market is not a fit for you because they always look at your 12-month itinerary. So if your 12-month itinerary includes the US and the Caribbean, we're going to Lloyd's of London.
Okay.
And Lloyd's of London is like over 200 syndicates, and there are just a handful that write boat insurance.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. I am definitely going to look into hiring you, or if you even can, for my boat.
Well, I'd be happy to give you advice. Like I said, in certain scenarios, I'm not the best option, but I can give you an objective opinion on who is.
Right. Because I'm definitely going to have to be more involved with my insurance policy, obviously. I'm not doing that. I'm doing everything wrong.
Well,
and hoping for the best.
Let me give you a hint that if you're buying from a company that you get a different person on the phone every time and it's an 800 number, you better be an expert on your insurance.
Yeah, that's my situation. How do named operator policies work, and when might permissive use be a better? You talked about named operator.
If you're in United States water and you're with a United States insurance company, you're not always, but likely on a permissive use form. Geico is a permissive use form. Geico, Progressive, Chubb, Travelers, they're all permissive use forms.
And what does that mean?
It means, Tinsley, if you tell me I can operate your boat and you give me permission, and just like giving me permission to drive your beautiful car, I'm covered. Okay. But if we're crossing the ocean or we're going to a London market or non-standard insurance, you're going to have a named operator policy that'll be based on my resume and my specific merits about whether or not I'm even capable.
Okay, so I had someone move my boat when I broke my ankle, and the captain said, add me to your policy. I contacted them, and they said, you're already covered for that.
Okay, so that's a very different scenario, because if you're paying someone to move your boat, then all of a sudden it falls under the Longshoremen's Act, which is a federal statute that says you're responsible for their illnesses, injuries, and diseases. It doesn't necessarily mean that your insurance is going to pay for that financial responsibility, because if you don't add them, it's not covered. So there are some companies that will include coverage for incidental crew, one or two on an occasional basis, but you don't know that until you reach out to your agent or underwriter and they tell you it's covered. And you want to tell them, okay, I'm hiring this person for this many days, here's where they're going, and they are paid crew.
So I would be just like in the case of Geico, going into the portal and emailing them, and then they answer and say, you're good. That's my proof right there.
As long as you get confirmation back, then you are good. But make sure that you're not just emailing them and assuming that you're good. You can never assume that.
I think that's the message for today.
Yeah.
The tip of the day is you got to go through that policy and know it. And it's all black and white. It's literal. It's very literal.
But back to that storm question, just because this is perfect timing to give everyone this reminder, make sure you read your policy and read the fine print, and then go back and read the applications and all the supporting documents you provided to see if you need to make any changes before you're in the cone of uncertainty. Because once you're in that 72-hour
you mean like a plan, like your hurricane plan or storm plan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, we were talking about lithium. If you don't have confirmation back from your underwriter that you had lithium and they were covering it, it doesn't matter if it's a named storm issue or not. Make sure you've disclosed everything, you've read everything, because it doesn't matter if it's connected to the fact there's a named storm coming. If you have not disclosed everything, you can void your coverage.
And again, if it's in a survey that they approved, that doesn't count. I mean, you really should email it to them in the portal and get a confirmation back.
Yeah, because they're taking everything into consideration, not just the survey. Sometimes the applications will even ask the question of whether or not you have lithium.
Yeah, and I can't remember. Okay.
Yeah, where there are a few markets that even ask if you had solar. So just make sure that if you think that you've added risk to your boat or your location or your captain crew situation or your equipment, make sure you tell the underwriter or the agent and get approval back that it's covered.
Is that for everything? I mean, what if it's like you get a new autopilot?
Yeah, well, that one you should definitely tell them, because that's usually worth a discount.
Well, but I already had one, but a new one would give you a discount?
Well, if it depends on if Geico included that in your discount list when you first applied.
Okay.
So just, if
I'm going to have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I'm definitely in this area right here is, in my opinion, is more risky than the West Coast of Florida, in the Northern Gulf Coast.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can add whatever, but I am going to ask you about some Liveaboard. What's the definition? What's the Liveaboard definition in insurance terms, and how can it impact coverage? We talked. They don't really like that. They don't really like Liveaboard.
That's a great question, Tinsley, because people will say that they're a Liveaboard, and then they use my address or their long lost cousin's address, or their mother or their cousin, whatever. That's not a acceptable answer. You cannot use someone's address where you do not live and say that you're not a Liveaboard.
That you're not a Liveaboard.
If you do not have a mortgage, deed, or lease with space somewhere in a building, then you're a Liveaboard.
Okay,
so Chubb does not write Liveaboards. Chubb, Progressive, Foremost, Travelers, they do not want to insure Liveaboards. So this is a very important question. If you have a Green Cove Springs address and you do not have a mortgage, deed, or lease somewhere with space where you have things and you go sometimes, then you are a Liveaboard.
What about, so if I'm a Liveaboard, but I have an address where I get mail, is that what you're saying? No.
So let me give you an example. I've got a guest room, and if I tell you, okay, Tinsley, I'm going to give you a lease, and you're going to pay me $1 every year for my guest room, and you're going to keep some clothes here, and once a year you're going to come here and you're going to use my guest room that's very close to Mac. You are not a Liveaboard because you have signed a lease that says that you have actual space in my home and there is legal tender exchanged with that dollar.
So you can't even have a house that you use as a home base and you're living aboard, 10 months a year. You're still not a Liveaboard.
Well, if I have a house and I'm on and I have things in the house and I'm paying a mortgage or I have a deed for that house, but I'm on my boat 365 days a year, I'm not a Liveaboard.
So that's a good thing.
That's a great thing. But most people don't last very long doing that. It's a frustrating situation. A single-handed Atlantic crossing is not, it's not insurable.
Well, this guy that just crossed the Pacific by himself with his cat.
Let me tell you that this is a really good transition to, this point about the fact that you can buy insurance for things that normal markets or even London markets would not cover. So you can buy insurance from Edward Williams, which is backed by Ion Insurance, which is basically this tiny little suite in the American Samoas. And if you just Google Ion Insurance or Edward Williams, you're going to see hundreds of websites that illustrate that they're not really paying claims, and they're written on a Costa Rica form that says you're waiving all your rights, including mediation, arbitration, legal action against them. So you're up the creek without a paddle, right?
We don't want that. Edward Williams.
Yeah, and you can buy Spheric insurance, you can buy Chinese, Russian-backed insurance. So if you want to do a crossing single-handedly, my best advice to you is, don't buy insurance, because you're going to be a better risk manager. I know a lot of people who do it. Maybe stay in touch with someone like me or with some of the teachers in the industry. Cruisers University is full of people who do transatlantic crossings, many of them by themselves. They have an incredible network. The Seven Seas Cruising Association has an incredible network. I love this block parent community in the boating world where we take care of each other. We take care of our own. It works better than insurance. So if you're doing a transatlantic crossing by yourself, you're not going to find good insurance. So do the crossing and then get insurance once you get there.
Okay. And I do want to acknowledge a question over on Instagram. Left Cedar, that's his username. To avoid hurricane premiums, how far north do I need to take my boat? I don't know if you can, hurricane premiums. Okay. How far north?
So it depends on the market. So the cutoff lines are the Florida-Georgia line, the 30th and 31st parallel, Cumberland Island, Georgia, Cape Hatteras, Morehead City, the North Carolina, Virginia line. So it really depends on the market. So my best advice is have an independent agent who's having this kind of dialogue with you, and make sure that, you're telling them, here's my plan. How do I optimize the cost the best way? And, what we usually do is if your boat is eligible for 5 markets, we'll give you all 5 markets. We'll tell you the cutoff line. It's not a pretty thing. It's an Excel spreadsheet. We'll tell you the cutoff line for all 5 markets. And then you can compare, okay, can I be north of Morehead City? No, I don't really like that. Can I be north of Cumberland Island? Or can I be between the Florida-Georgia line and Cumberland Island? It really depends on the market. So you really need to see a comparison snapshot of all the markets.
Okay. Wow. Okay. What common time, you covered this, what time restrictions exist for Bahamas or Caribbean cruising? How can owners plan ahead? Well, Bahamas is 90 days for
I
some.
only did for Geico. So if you have American Modern or Geico, you're looking at 90 days. If you have Progressive, because you're not a Liveaboard, remember, you're going to have 30 days. And that's for the whole policy year. That's not 30 days at a time. If you have State Farm, you have no restriction whatsoever on the time you spend in the Bahamas, but you do have a restriction on where you go in the Bahamas. I have a map I can share of where they're cut, because they basically cut off the bottom tip of the Bahamas, and most people can live with it because their premiums are about half of the rest of the industry.
Okay. Like when you say where, okay, so the bottom, do they restrict like Nassau because it's dangerous, or is
rather than being pigeonholed into a corner, I'd rather just give the box as it stands today with a date. This is where it is today, because I don't ever want to be quoted on, here's what's going to apply a month from now.
Right. Okay. And I do want to show your website here. You had pointed out that this is where you can apply for insurance.
Yeah. And if you apply for insurance and you're a better fit for State Farm or Geico or a market that we don't work with, maybe the Caribbean, if you apply there and we see your application and we know you're a better fit for a Caribbean market, for example, we will handhold your application and put it on a platter for the other market, and we'll get your permission. Hey, can we share this with the Barbados broker? You'll say yes, we'll get that permission in writing, and then we'll share it and you'll be off and running. And you can use us as a sounding board to give you, objective advice on the—
like this right here, storm plan assistance. I like that. Okay, so we just go here for anybody watching that wants to check out what you have to offer, because obviously we need some hands held here because we are not experts. But we could just go there and apply. And do we get you, or do we just contact you? Can we just contact you directly?
It starts with me because, I mean, as you can probably guess, we get referrals from a lot of agents that don't write non-standard business. So we get a lot of the highly unusual or challenging situations, or people who've had claims or have older boats. If you've had I did have there's probably someone on this call that I talked to earlier in the week that has had a claim. And they would tell you, look, if you've had a claim and you just need a sounding board on how the process works, I'm not a adjuster. I'm not a public adjuster. I don't charge for it, but I'm happy to be a sounding board for anyone who's just really struggling with a situation like that.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. How do storm plans and caretaker arrangements factor into coverage for absentee or seasonal owners? You kind of covered that, or did you covered everything with that you want to say on this call?
So let's talk about what an absentee owner is. Most markets will define an absentee owner as someone who lives or has an address of 100 or 150 miles away from their boat. So even if you're on your boat all the time, if your address says something else, you may still be an absentee owner, depending on the insurance market.
How many miles did you say?
Well, some of them are 100 and some of them are 150.
Okay.
Some of them want to know that you're not leaving your boat for more than 14 days at a time. Some of them want you to specifically outline, here are the months or weeks that I won't be on my boat. It depends on your market. So have a conversation with your agent so that you know.
You do mention Geico that you have to update every 14 days if you're on the move. So are there any other companies? I mean, we won't hold you to every single one, but is it the only one, or is there other ones too?
So the other ones only require that you update, and I'd say 80% of the other markets require that you update your named storm location.
Okay.
Not all the time. Geico wants you to update your location all year.
Amazing. So I'm leaving in a couple months, and I'll be gone for 3 months. So I'm going to have to every 14 days go in there.
Just look at it as, okay, it's like, your ADP payroll. Every 2 weeks, you're going to update your location.
Okay. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, we've been on here for 57 minutes. So what else would you like to say that I ignorantly didn't ask?
Well, anytime I do this, it really is a consumer service.
Thank you.
Tinsley would tell you that I did try to pull some other agents into this, and we're a small and mighty agency. I am constantly apologizing because I can't return enough phone calls in an efficient time manner. So if you're one of those people, again, I'm sorry. We're working on that. We're building our staff. But we're really in this business because we love it, and we're trying to give back. And a lot of times we do work to give you an objective opinion in a way where we never get paid. And that's just our heart in this. But one of the ways that, if you're interested, you could thank us for this unpaid advice that we give, is give back to Hope Fleet. So Hope Fleet is an organization that we sponsor, and we provide supplies to. They use boats to bring supplies to the Bahamas, the Caribbean.
What is that, hopefleet.com or?
Hopefleet.org.
Hope.
So if you have an island packet and you are going to the Bahamas, they have partners in the Bahamas, and they will provide you with a vetted partner where you can bring supplies, and you don't have to buy all the supplies. They are always trying to get supplies there. So they'll meet you at the dock, load you up with the supplies. They bring garden buckets and school supplies and disaster relief supplies and construction equipment after disasters. And they also have a child trafficking reporting system.
Wow.
So, a lot of trafficking happens by boat. So check out their website. A lot of people ask me, how do why do you do this? How do you get rewarded? The reward for the situations we're talking about where we don't get paid is for people to give back to Hope Fleet.
Okay, so just so I understand, so if I'm going to the Bahamas, I can stop somewhere in Florida and load up some stuff and take it, or is that what you're saying?
Exactly, because the advantage is they have a partnership not only with local vetted organizations on the ground in the Bahamas where they need the supplies, but they also have a partnership with customs. So they give customs a manifest of everything you have on board, and you never get flagged. You just clear right through customs.
Nice.
No questions asked. Yeah.
Okay, so are there specific locations in Florida?
If you just tell them what your itinerary is, they're all over and they'll come and meet you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, and it's
Okay.
actually really a big deal, especially after hurricanes. So if you start watching, after November 1st, usually there are places that really appreciate the help.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we do that all the time here. A lot of the real estate agents, the brokerages,
Yeah.
if there's a hurricane in Louisiana, we load up stuff and take it over
Yeah.
there. Or if it's,
Yeah.
Hurricane Michael over in, east of here. So yeah, that is a great service. I would love to maybe get involved with that when I go to the Bahamas
Yeah, for
this
sure.
year. Okay.
All right.
Well, you're going to hear from me because
Okay.
I am horrified at my coverage right now and what I don't know. So,
Send you that link for the self-service website for Geico, and then I will send you. Honestly, their storm plan is actually very simple and comprehensive compared to others I've seen. So I'll send you a form, and it's really easy to make the updates.
all right, and there is something forming in the Caribbean. There is something in the Atlantic, but there's also something forming right now in the Caribbean. Those usually come towards me. So yeah, it's the time to do it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And again, I want to put up that email of yours. You're just a wealth of information. I know we probably just touched on.
So if anyone's at the Annapolis Boat Show and you have a lot more questions, come visit us on Saturday at the Annapolis Boat Show. We do a free continental breakfast at our booth.
Okay, and Hayden says, I need Kerry's help too. I will email you. And Goose says that was golden.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And we'll go ahead and end it now. Thank you. And I'll be in touch. Salty Abandon out.